Good morning, and thank you for joining this month's Worksoft webinar. I'm Alicia Bell, Senior Digital Marketing Manager for Worksoft and your webinar host. Today, we'll explore how to expedite Oracle change with confidence. This webinar will be recorded, and a link to the on-demand session will be available for those who are unable to attend or who wish to share or review the information. Due to a large number of participants, lines will be muted. We'll answer questions at the end of our presentation. Please use the question feature to submit your question. Our webinar will be co-presented by Worksoft and Panaya, two leading providers in the testing space. Change Intelligence from Panaya and Connective Automation from Worksoft come together to deliver the industry's most efficient and effective way for enterprises to future-proof change by eliminating risk and generating a comprehensive project plan to fully prepare for the next steps in their ERP evolution. The combined solution seamlessly links changes to automated testing of business processes, resulting in defect risk reduction, streamlined test scope, and significantly reduced testing time. Now, let's meet today's speakers. Roy Cadrone is a product manager with Panaya. An 18-year Oracle eBusiness Suite veteran, Roy has served as project manager, application manager, tech lead, and developer, as well as a manager for Oracle Consulting focused on Oracle EBS projects. In his role as product manager for Panaya, Roy leads the Oracle domain product portfolio, including all inbound and outbound product activities. Mike LaFleur is a solution architect for Worksoft. Mike has spent the majority of his career helping enterprises solve thorny business problems using software. An Oracle Enterprise Architect, Mike currently helps customers realize the value of end-to-end connective automation to understand, de-risk, and optimize their business processes. Without further ado, let me turn it over to Roy.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Okay, so welcome. I'll just introduce myself a bit further while you can glance at the agenda. I've been in Oracle EBS for the past 18 years, from the bottom as a developer, a team leader, project manager for Oracle. I also managed cloud projects when I was in Oracle. And I want to talk briefly about the joint value that Worksoft and Panaya have in the Oracle domain. First off, Oracle ERP is alive and kicking. Whether it's EBS or cloud apps, organizations keep investing and enjoying their past investments in the systems. Now, while we see the Oracle Cloud is growing, a recent survey also showed that EBS customers are very happy with their R12.1 or R12.2 systems. 42% of people on R12.2, which is the current version, are saying that they'll use their EBS systems indefinitely, meaning more than 5 years ahead. Also, 24% of EBS customers will develop new customizations this year, and 30% will implement new features or modules this year. Now, here are some of the use cases we have in the Oracle domain. First off, in eBiz, you have development and maintenance. Of course, these are systems that have been alive for 10, even 20, even more years. And there's a lot of value there and a lot of customizations that have been made and that are continuing to be made. And that's what a lot of Oracle IT have been up to. Then there's patching. That's part of maintenance, but I do want to talk about it a bit more because this is sort of a mini upgrade, I call it, because you basically change your standard, change the Oracle standard in your system. There are upgrades, of course. The major upgrades I'm talking about are 11 to 12.1 or 12.1 to 12.2. That's the biggest upgrade right now because 12.1 is reaching enough support at the end of this year. Of course, you can stay on 12.1 on R12.1 in market-driven support, but a lot of people are now upgrading to 12.2 because of all the innovation, the enterprise command centers, all those things. And then in the cloud, you also have, if you're already on the cloud, you have development and maintenance. Of course, you need to test, you need to do regression tests every quarter because of the quarterly updates that Oracle does. And if you are now migrating to cloud, that's a huge project. You redefine all your business processes or all the best practices. And it's a huge greenfield reimplementation, and that needs also to be managed. Panaya, my company, we're a product company, and Panaya is a smart test management platform. Now, we also have ALM, application lifecycle management, meaning development and release management, but today I'm here with Worksoft and I want to focus on testing. We are business process centric, connected to the actual business processes. In this case, you can see concurrent programs and workflows, standard workflows and programs in the system, but also forms, reports to give visibility and easily engage the business users when they're doing their UAT, their user acceptance tests. We enable test documentation on the fly. We have a recorder that runs, in this case of the Oracle Cloud, for effortless evidence recording of test execution. We have a central repository to easily reuse assets across projects, and it can be populated from Excel files, PDFs, Word files, but even better from recordings done in Worksoft. And finally, because we scan your system and know all the different interdependencies between the custom code and the other custom code and the standard, we can leverage risk-based testing in several ways, and I'll expand on that on the next slide. Now, risk-based testing means you get the correct scope of testing to be done. You know exactly what to test based on changes made, and just as important, you know what not to test. Of course, you need to test the impacted areas, of course, but some of them are unknown because the functional expert just left or the developer wrote code which is unreadable. Maybe it's, but if it's in the database, you can pretty much find it easily with an SQL query that you can run if you know the impacted objects. But then there are hidden objects. By hidden, I mean objects that were impacted, but you can't find them in a simple query because they're not even in the database. They're binary files on the application server. They're forms, reports, SQL scripts, prog scripts, the shell scripts of concurrent programs. And those require more work and more expertise to find. And then there's also collateral impact. Collateral impact means if a patch contains new code, you can't just check the objects that use that code, but you need to check 2, 3, 4 levels down to figure out if something broke, if anything in your customizations broke. With what not to test, you can scope out objects and entry points that you just don't use or you rarely use. And that's also something that Panaya finds out, the actual usage of your specific system. And of course, don't test things that weren't impacted. You don't have to test, if you change the payables view, you don't need to test the order management module, but maybe you should, depending on what you did in your customization. Now in this dashboard, you can see a test cycle and just how much of the impact is being covered by the existing tests and what needs to be changed in order to reach 100% coverage. These changes can be upgrades, of course, which are huge system-wide changes, but it can also be customizations that you're changing right now or patches that you're installing. And I'll detail very briefly about each of these cases. Patches. There are several kinds of patches. Patches are Oracle's bunched up together code. They can be forms and database objects and all those things that change the standard functionality, the capabilities. It changes, and if you are building customizations on top of that standard data model, APIs, code, then your customizations might break. There are all different kinds of patches. CPU are critical patch updates. One was just released October 20th, about a week ago. And there are RUPs and RPCs, which are functional changes, bug fixes. There are individual patches that you can also install if you want to fix one specific bug or add one specific capability. And you have one-offs, which are tailor-made patches that it doesn't happen to anyone. So Oracle support actually builds you a patch for yourself. And each one of these can break your customizations. For your customizations, here I have a sample of a drill down on an EBS profile. Because we know the different objects that reference it, we can also give you insights into specific EBS objects, profiles, value sets, code to identify anomalies, misuse of objects. If you want to change a profile and a concurrent program is using it as a default value for a parameter, you're going to break something. And you need to make sure that you're not doing that. And of course, you can then enable risk-based testing on your own customizations. And lastly, I want to talk about upgrades. For upgrades, we have an amazing product that gives you a full upgrade project plan within 48 hours based on your code and setup. You run an extraction program, you upload it into Panaya's cloud. It doesn't extract your data, just the code. And you get a complete list of correction tasks and tests and which online patching readiness report script findings are false alarms. So there's no need to handle them. And those are thousands of corrections. And we scope out about 80% of those because they will self-heal. And you don't know that by running the Oracle scripts. And then, of course, you can leverage Worksoft's automation to test your new upgraded system in each of the upgrade trials. Now, that's it for the Panaya part. If you have any questions, I will come back in the Q&A section in the end, and I'll now send it back over to Mike. Here. Now Mike will present.
So one of the things that Roy just talked about a couple times was the ability to execute tests within Worksoft and invoke those from within Panaya. And so this is what it looks like conceptually. On the left, you see Panaya. On the right, you see Worksoft. One of the first things that happens in this integration that's pre-built is that the tests that were developed in Worksoft get synchronized to the library in Panaya. So when you identify which test you want to run within Panaya, it's chosen from the library, that asset repository that Roy talked about. It's already in there. And then once you select that, you can trigger that from Panaya, and then it executes within Worksoft. And then the results of those tests actually get fed back into Panaya as well. So from an end user point of view, it's going to look seamless. It's going to be transparent because that synchronization happens to the asset library within Panaya. And so it runs in the background. But what I will say is this suite of tests that are developed actually, although it's transparent in Panaya, there's a lot of work that has to be done in order to get the right test in the state where it's going to make a difference in your environment. So I think if I were to say this to you, you know, in your experience as software professionals or business professionals, someone would say, hey, what does your process look like? You're likely going to describe it sort of what's going on in the top graphic. But we know that this isn't true. A lot of times these processes are messy. And even in the context of testing automation, there can be multiple variations of a process. There can be multiple iterations that happen, and it can get messy. So this actually leads to inefficiencies, and these inefficiencies can be anything from duplicating processes, long-running processes. It just can get messy. And so in order to get those test automations into a state where it's the right test that Panaya runs at the right time, there's a little bit of work that has to be done. And Worksoft is set up to help that. Now, this slide is actually illustrating a pretty important concept. And I'd like just for a second for you to focus on the two graphics in the center, Process Intelligence and Certify Automation Studio. Think of process intelligence as giving you the ability to understand the processes within your enterprise, whether those processes are e-business suite or some other enterprise application. they can be brought into process intelligence. You can slice and dice them, look at them, and gain an understanding around that process. And then once you understand those processes, you can move those over to Certify, which is our codeless automation suite. So you can create shareable components. You can create automations that are reusable. The real point is that you're understanding your processes, you're designing them in such a way that they're fit for purpose, and then a tool like Panaya can use them for the automation of testing. So if you look at this screen, over to the left are the ways that you get the processes into process intelligence so that you can understand them. There's two essential ways that you can do this. One is by capturing them, and I'll talk a lot about capturing processes here in just a second. The other way is process mining. So you can ingest these processes into process intelligence, get good analytics, good understanding of them, move them over into Certify so that you create codeless automations. And then in the context of Panaya, you move them to a state where they can be invoked through that library selection and then invocation from Panaya, getting the results back. So what I want to do in terms of a demo is I want to show you process capture. I want to show you how easy it is for someone to capture a process. In this case, it's going to be purchase order creation in EBS, and then get that ready for process intelligence. And then we'll look at process intelligence, take a look at what that process actually sort of looks like, and then get that to a state where we move it over to codeless automation. We'll take a quick peek at what that actually means in the Worksoft environment. And then the last thing that I want to show you is the automated documentation that's generated by the system. So we're going to do process capture, we're going to understand the process, we're going to look at codeless automation, and then we're going to look at documentation that's generated. So now I'm going to move into the demo. So let me switch screens here. Now what we're looking at on the right is Worksoft's capture tool. It's a lightweight tool meant to be put on a user's desktop. And what it does is essentially records the actions that a user undertakes in their normal business day. This can be a business user. This is not a developer. This is an end user tool. And on the left, obviously, we're looking at e-business suite. So what the user does is goes ahead and starts the recording. And then they start clicking on the form as if they were using it, because they really are using it. And you can see that on the right, capture is gathering all of the mouse clicks, all of the actions that the user is undertaking, whether it's drop-down lists or free-form text fields, any of these objects on the screen, capture is able to interact with and record. So as we see at the end of getting this line item put in there, what we'll actually see is on the right is all of the steps that were undertaken in order to create that process. And what you'll notice are there's some other features in there, like screenshots of the object that it was interacting with, and you can actually do screenshots of the entire screen as well. Pretty robust functionality. The point is that we're capturing all the activity in a really easy way so that it can be used to create automations. Now you'll notice that I stopped down on a button right next to the record button. Now this is, if I click on this button, it stores this capture in a centralized repository. And the reason that this is important is all of those other steps that I'm going to undertake are facilitated by this central repository. So that process intelligence that I talked about, an understanding of the process based on that capture, it comes from that central repository. The generation of the actual automation or the generation of that documentation, it's all facilitated by having this central repository. So from the end user point of view, we're done. And now we could go into some sort of process analysis, change hats. So now what we'll do is we'll close out capture and EBS, and we'll actually take a look at process intelligence. There's a couple different views that I could use for process intelligence. Right now, we're actually going to look at the analysis of captures. So these are those processes that I used the capture tool and got those into the system. Now, what I did is I just moved that slider bar so that I could drill down into the longest running process. These are inefficient ones. I probably want to automate those. And there happens to be 3 variants of this. If I click on that bottom variant, what you'll see is it highlights that variant. And now I have the option to either generate or mark for automation this process, which I just did, or I can go in and I can create documentation. For now, we're just going to stick with the automation. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at the dashboard because there's actually an impact in doing this. And so the dashboard actually gives us insight into what's the value represented by the automations that we've discovered, either through that process capture or through process mining. And so, for example, if I were to drill into this just a little bit more and focus on just my business process testing impact, if I were to automate one of my processes, I might look at it from a different point of view and say, oh, now out of a potential $4.5 million savings, which is calculated based on all of the processes in my organization, and then I've automated one, and now I can realize a $30,000 savings. And this is just by automating a small fraction of those. I can also change my perspective and look at it from a departmental point of view. So I can see, which are the most ripe for optimization or automation coverage. The goal in the context of the Panaya integration, however, is coverage. So what I want to do is I want to maximize my automated testing coverage. So I would use the dashboard to uncover, to understand where I need to expand my coverage so that when Panaya identifies the test that it wants to run based on those optimizations, it's available. So now that we've gotten that process ready for automation, I want to show you just briefly what it looks like in the codeless automation. So what we see are a bunch of processes that are using EBS. And so this is a purchase order creation process. It was ingested from that capture, and now it's in the codeless automation tool. So you can see all of the steps that go into that process. You can see which window was being accessed, what object the cursor was on, and what action was undertaken in that object. So for example, you can see that a value of staples was put in there, or if I go to bike parts or go down to the next step, you'll see bike parts. Now, the reason that I'm showing you this is that you can parameterize those values. And what this does for you is it allows you to reuse this process based on your needs at the time of running it. The other reusability thing that I would point out is you see multiple processes in that list up there. For example, the very bottom one says forms logout. So rather than capture forms logout with every process that I'm running, I capture it once and then reuse it many places. This is how you get scalability in the testing automation space. And then what you do is you bundle these together so that, and then expose them in the library so that Panaya can invoke the entire end-to-end process from launching of EBS to logging in, to running the process, for example, the purchase order creation process, and then closing it out. But again, none of this would have been possible had we not understand what that process actually looked like. So to wrap this up, what I want to do is go back to process intelligence, to that specific variant that we were looking at, and I want to show you the documentation being created as well. So if I navigate down to that and I hit the document button, a dialog pops up and I can select a template for how my documentation is going to look. And what you'll see when I open this up is that that entire process that I created with that capture tool, all of those screenshots, the narrative about where I am in the process, it's all here available for me, and it was automatically generated. Now I chose PDF, but you could actually save this as a Word document and use this as part of the automation documentation. You can annotate it and roll it out there. So again, in order to facilitate that integration with Panaya, we captured a process using the capture tool. We understood that process and got it ready so that it could be automated. We performed codeless automation, and then we also took a look at the documentation that's part of that as well. So the end result is what we exposed to Panaya is the right test. We're confident of that because we understand the automation based on the insights that we get and the work that we did on it. So the combination of this is actually represented on this slide. So if you think about testing, you could do no testing, and this would be highly risky to your organization. Or you could test everything, and that would be very expensive in terms of time and cost. But with the combination of Panaya and Worksoft, you're hitting the sweet spot. You're running the right test at the right time with high confidence that that you're doing the right thing, and you're going to minimally impact your EBS implementation. Now, what we have found over the years working together is that it's a pretty astonishing set of numbers. In terms of reducing the scope of a testing regime, by focusing only on the impacted processes, you can reduce scope by 98%. Or you can actually increase your testing, again, by focusing on the right tests. You can increase your testing speeds by 85%. And this actually will allow you to innovate and make changes with the speed that you need to make these changes at. And then that combination of performing the right test at the right time actually reduces your risks substantially as well. So, that actually wraps it up. I think it's a powerful integration. I think that ability to do the right test at the right time seamlessly, transparently to the end user is really powerful. And at this point, I would just like to open it up to questions.
Thanks, Mike. And if Roy can join us as well, we'll take a couple of questions. If you have questions and you're in the audience and you want to add to the roster, there are questions. There's a question tab there within GoToWebinar. So let's see. We're currently on release 12.1 and are planning to upgrade to 12.2. How long can we expect this project to take? Roy, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I've managed several upgrade projects. 12.1 to 12.2, it's a big upgrade. It's not as big as an 11 to 12 because a lot of things have changed in release 12. The subledger accounting, the multi-org accounting, a new tax module, the financials have changed a lot. From 12.1 to 12.2, the biggest deal is online patching. If you're directly referencing a table, a standard table, that you're non-compliant. Basically, you need to reference an additioning view because of the online patching and how it uses additioning-based redefinition, this new database tech that Oracle came up with, and you need to enable online patching. You can't really reference a table anymore because when you're referencing a table, you're only looking at a specific edition, and that's illegal. Basically, you need to look at the one that's currently live, because there are two instances for shorter downtime when you're patching, or even when you're installing your own things, if you decide to enable online patching for your custom schemas. But a project like this really depends, the duration of it depends, first off, if you're using Panaya Worksoft, we're a powerhouse together for speeding up, for fast tracking the project. But it depends on how big the landscape is, how many modules have been implemented, how many customizations have been made. And it can be, the biggest upgrades can take about a year. Smaller ones can take 2 months. Even with all the cycles that you need to do about 4-5 cycles, CRP1, CRP2, UAT, a dry run to do it, just to make sure, just to understand how short or long your downtime is for the upgrade itself. But it typically takes about 6 months on average.
Okay. And a question, does Panaya get access to my data?
No, only to the code itself, not the data itself.
Okay. I have a question. Of course, Mike, you showed multiple different aspects of Connective Automation Platform. I have a question whether or not the capture and the testing piece, if those are purchased separately or part of the same thing.
Yeah, so right now, they're all part of the same product. And this is a huge win for any Worksoft shop, anybody who comes on board with Worksoft, because once you have that license, once you have that that product installed, you can repurpose it. Where some approaches to this capturing and testing would make you either pay upgrade or pay for add-ons or plugins or whatever. What we're saying is, you buy the license, you use it for capture, and when capture is done, you can use it to run your automation. So it allows you some flexibility there. Yeah, it's one product right now.
Okay, I have a couple of questions about how long it takes to implement. One is how long does it take to implement the Panaya system? And another is what does it take to get the capture up and running for my business users? So I guess Roy, take the Panaya one, and then Mike elaborate on the.
Yeah, Panaya is a SaaS product. It's a SaaS platform. Basically, we can create an account in minutes. And then our customer success managers onboard the end users. It takes several hours just to teach, but no more than that. And if you're a testing user, you can just, I think 1 hour is quite enough.
Okay.
Yeah, so we would have a similar claim. The tool that you showed, or that I showed, you actually have to install it on the user's desktop. So that's the major part of the effort, right? They have to have access to the tools that they're going to be capturing. So, for example, EBS or whatever else it is. But you install that on their desktop, and there's really no training, right? You saw how easy it was. You press that record button and you start clicking on it, and you're good to go. Now, what we'd like to talk about is, that's day one value, right? Because you're getting insight into your processes as soon as you hit save on that captured process. You're getting day one value. So, there really isn't an implementation time. It's a pretty powerful thing.
Okay. And I think that covers our questions for now. So I thank you both for your time, and everybody have a great day.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.